high schooler and a young college person, and I think the perfect time to either be really godly or really ungodly. I was a high schooler in the 60s. And in the 60s and the early 70s, I was in college. That was a time of a whole lot of sinfulness going on, but it was also a time when it seemed that the church was on fire, and you could go one way or the other. I remember that things that we hadn't had before, there were all sorts of posters with scriptures on them, and one of those scriptures is what I want to talk about today, but I want to maybe take it away that we don't usually take it. So I'm going to read our text first. We may end up going to another version once or twice. I don't know, I haven't decided yet. But the text for today is 1 Corinthians, the 13th chapter, and we'll be starting with verse 4. I remember seeing this on Bible school walls, on the posters and everything, and you know how some things just stick with you? This has been one of those things. You know, I'd like to say that my mind is a steel trap, and it might be, but it's been rusted shut. I can't remember all the things I used to remember, but some things I remember crystal clear. Starting verse 4. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Over the years, we have looked at this verse and what it means for being married. We've looked at it for what it means to love our neighbor. I'm going to look at it in a slightly different way today. We know that love is what the law and the prophets was based on. We read it last week and do it so many times. Matthew 22, 34 through 40. We're not going to read it, but the great commandment is to love God, and the one like it is to love our neighbor. Love is so very important, and we preachers have tried to explain that love, that agape love, and it's difficult because it's divine. It's not the love you feel for your mate. You should have that as well, but it's not the same thing. I want us to look at it today to help us understand God and His love for us. We always look at it as what we should have. Well, I want us to maybe shift the narrative a bit and look and see about God. Love is patient. We know from the scriptures that God is love. God is patient. Turn to 2 Peter, the 3rd chapter. I always do that when I have too many numbers, but God is patient. He's not willing that any should perish. He's patient. Can you imagine? Imagine yourself as God. And then I want you to think. Think about how many times you've messed up. And then I'm going to say, now I'm going to stop with the messed up. Because there's a difference between messed up and did it on purpose. That's the difference between a general sin and a trespass. A margarita just means you missed the mark. And sometimes we miss the mark a lot, but that's not all we do. Sometimes we shoot at the wrong target. Sometimes we trespass, we do wrong. Think of all the times that you first of all messed up, and then think of all the times that you deliberately knew what you should do and you didn't do it. And then put yourself in God's place and ask yourself, how much patience would you have with yourself? God is patient because He has more patience with me than I have with myself. How many times have good people been depressed and give up? How many times have you given up on yourself? God never has. God is patient and He's waiting. I really think that if we were all honest with ourselves, God is much more patient with us than we would be with ourselves. I know people who become Christians in their 60s and their 70s. God was patiently waiting. I try to be patient, but I don't have all that much patience. I was raised in a house where when Dad said go, you did two things. You ran to the bathroom, and you better be out in the car in less than 2 minutes. God is patient. He gives us the time that we need to come to Him. He gives us the time to repent. God is kind. When I think of the word kind, I think of a pretty close synonym, and that's compassion. Kindness is compassion in action. So they're close. They're not exactly the same, but when we think of God, we need to think of his kindness and his compassion. He doesn't like it when we sin. He doesn't whitewash our sin. But he has compassion on us. I think that, to me, that's the one thing that I see so wonderful in being a Christian, is that I know that there is punishment for sin. I know that there are consequences. But I also know that God has compassion on me and doesn't call me to account for my sins when I do them. He's kind and compassionate. And he understands what I'm going through. He understands what you're going through. That doesn't make doing wrong right, but it means that he has compassion and kindness, because God, in his infinite mercy, knew that once we were out of the garden, we had no hope. If there was only one rule, which Eve broke because she was beguiled, she was hoodwinked. That's why when we talked in Romans about sin coming through one man, Eve was hoodwinked. She made a mistake. She was lied to and believed it. Adam did not make a mistake. That's why when God called him on it, he said it's her fault. Because he didn't make a mistake. He decided to do wrong. And then wasn't man enough to accept it. God knew that when we were in the world, with all of the sin, all of the things that we should do, all the things we should not do, that if mankind couldn't follow one rule, there's no way in the world that man could be righteous in this world. So he sent his son. He had the compassion and kindness to have a plan to redeem us when we didn't deserve it. That's kindness. That's compassion. And I want you to think back into your life. And I think if you think pretty hard, or maybe pretty easy, you can put your finger on times that God has been kind to you. Not kind to mankind, not kind in general, but times when you can look back and you can say, you know what? God was really kind. He was really good to me then. He showed compassion to me. Are are so many times that God in my life has put things in front of me so that I didn't do what I probably would have done. He showed kindness. I've said it before and I'll say it again, and you can get upset at me, but I truly believe that God does sometimes stick his finger in our affairs. I was going through a divorce, and I felt terrible. I felt I had failed as a husband, as a father, as a man. And I happen to have a pretty good life insurance policy on me. And I'm driving over Cuesta Grade. And if you know Spanish, you know that's stupid. Cuesta means grade. It's grade. But it's very steep. It's very curvy. It's about a mile high. And it's at the ocean. So you're 5,000. It's tough. And I'm thinking, my wife and kids would be so much better off without me here. They would have all that money. It would be so good. And if I just miss this curve, they'll never think it's suicide. People go off the hill all the time. It'll be perfect. I can just keep driving. But God looked down in kindness and compassion on me and knew that I was being stupid. Well, the first time in my life, it won't be the last. But he knew I was being stupid, and he did something. There was a car in front of me, and that car slammed on its brakes for absolutely no reason. And I slammed on my brakes. Why did I do that? I've been planning on going off anyway. God in his kindness, and I believe this with my whole heart, that he caused that person to slam his brakes on for no reason to keep me from doing something stupid. Compassion. Look in your life, and I would bet you can find instances of God's kindness to you. Back to our scripture again, and love does not envy or boast. Philippians 2:6. 2nd chapter, verses 6 through 8. And we'll read that. Who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men. God doesn't envy. In fact, he had his son empty himself, which is the literal there in the Greek. He emptied himself of all the divinity that he had, that form of godliness. God doesn't envy, and he doesn't boast. Everything he says is the truth. There's a song that, now it's an old song, but it was new when I heard it. Lord, it's hard to be humble when you're perfect in every way. That's we human beings. We pump up our good points and downplay the bad ones. But that's not God. When God says something, when he talks about his power, his purity, his might, he's telling the truth. He is telling the truth. I don't know about you, but just think about being perfect. I had a friend in college, 4 point whatever. He always got A's. He never did anything wrong. He got arrested for breaking out of a house because the pressure of being perfect got him so much that he got so drunk that he woke up in a house. He was trying to break out of it. He wasn't trying to break in. He had gotten in when he was totally wasted. God doesn't envy the fact that we get to break rules and still going to make it to heaven. He sent his son here to make that possible. There's no envy in him. There's no boasting, no bragging. Is not arrogant or rude. God never says, you stupid, you silly, you dumb. He's always there with a hand to lift you up, isn't he? He's not there to put you down. When we see people that do things wrong, it's easy, isn't it, to be arrogant, to be rude. I tell you, sometimes I get so angry at Facebook because I see the arrogant and rude things that good people say, that it just drives me crazy. Because it does seem like sometimes that we get really happy when other people are sad. And that we don't have compassion for the way that people feel. But God is never arrogant, and he's not rude. He's not out there trying to make fun of us for the things we do wrong. He's He's there trying to make us better, to help us. It does not insist on its own way. Well, God sort of does. Think about it like this. There's a right, there's a wrong. And it's that way because it is. God didn't decide to make things right or make things wrong. They are. Now, I want you to look at it in a different sense. How many times as we, as a nation, or as parents, have tried to make people do exactly what we want, and if you don't do it, God gave us free will. He didn't insist that you have to do this. There are times that I think it would be a lot better if God had made me a robot and that I didn't have free will and I didn't have the ability to choose wrong. Because I can choose wrong, and I sometimes do. But God didn't insist on us being unable to do wrong. He gave us that free will to do that. Now, does that mean that there's not consequences? No, there's consequences because it's a reward. Nobody, at least nobody that I know of, blames God when they drop a plate and it breaks. Because the plate breaking was a consequence. It wasn't something that was a punishment. Well, I'm going to punish you because you dropped that plate. I'm going to break that plate for you. No, it's a consequence. Sin has consequences that are there. God never forbade anything that was good for us. He never said, don't do something that was good for us. I think that's something that we forget a lot, is we think that God just sat there and on a Thursday in eternity decided, well, I'm going to make this wrong. I'm going to make this wrong. No, he's righteous and holy, and some things are just wrong. Not irritable or resentful. Does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. God is not evil. Another version says that he does not rejoice in evil, but rejoices in the truth. God is perfectly holy. And we can trust him in that he does not have anything to do with that which is wrong, but that he rejoices in the truth. Not in his way, but he rejoices in the truth, in that which is real. Can you imagine if your kids treated you the way that you treat God? Would you be irritable or resentful? That's not the way God is, though. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. When you picture God, picture a being who is willing to bear everything it takes to keep you with him forever. Whatever burden that takes. That he believes all things. He believes in you when you don't believe in yourself. Hopes all things. He never loses hope in you, even when you've lost all hope. Endures all things. It is our greatest hope in life. This material life, I think that we will find somebody to marry that will answer these things, that will bear all things for us, believe all things, hope all things, and endure all things for us. That's what we look for. But we already have that in God, who doesn't give up on us, who has given us so many outs. We had a terrible time coming back from Oklahoma because of the tollways. Made a little mistake. Knew better, but made a mistake. Knew that the way to get to Weber's Falls is to go all the way to the freeway, and then you take the exit. But if we're driving down, and it's late at night, well, the sign says Weber Falls, this way. Well, yeah, it is. You go that way, and you can come out of the South Song. The only problem is you take that exit and then you realize you're not smart. Guess what? You go back. There ain't no way to get back on it. You got to go all the way back, pay the toll, turn around, and you can't just turn around. You got to turn around, you go a mile, you come back, and you get back on and pay another toll, and then you go. The reason I said that is God puts so many exits in our lives. It's not like the tollway where there's only one exit. If you mess up and you don't take the right exit, he's got another exit there for you, because he is doing his best to bring you home. If you need to answer the invitation in a public way, you can come now as we stand.